And now for the third part of our Chapter 7 presentations. This one will focus on fraud deception. So theft by deception or fraud has some basic elements. So this is, we may see differences according to a particular statute and what state we're in, or whether it's the model penal code or whatever it may be. But we can usually find these general elements. So I don't require you to know each and every one, but just keep the general elements in mind so you have a good idea of what fraud consists of and what are some of the major requirements and restrictions. So first of all, someone has to make a representation. Someone has to make a claim. So let's use our simple explanation, or I should say simple example, of someone who claims to be canning for Thon at Penn State, but they really aren't. So their representation when they knock on the door is, "Hi, I'm canning for Thon. Would you like to make a donation?" So they've made a representation that they are actually working for Thon. In order for this to be fraud, that statement has to be false. It has to be material. By material, it means it has to be important. So it's not, "Hi, I'm canning for Thon," and the person really is canning for Thon. So let's change our facts just a little bit. And the person says, "I'm a senior," when in fact they're really a couple credits short of being a senior. But is that likely to make a difference to the person who gives them some money? Let's assume that everything else they say is true, that they really are canning for Thon, they're really collecting money for it. Is the person likely, the person who answers the door and gives money, are they likely to say, "Gee, you know, if you were a senior and really were a senior, I would give you money, but because you're only a junior, because you're a couple credits short of senior classification, I'm not going to give you the money"? Well, no, nobody would do that, or it's very unlikely they would. So that wasn't a material falsehood. It was a false statement, maybe even a knowingly false statement, but it wasn't material. So material, when we see that in the law, when we say it has to be a material element, means it's a significant element. It's something that's important. So instead, if our person says, "I'm canning for Thon," and that's a false statement, they're not canning for Thon, they're just trying to collect money to keep for themselves, then that would be a material element. Because if you just came up to the door and said, "Hi, I don't have much money, just give me some," the person behind the door probably wouldn't give you any. Maybe they would, maybe they wouldn't, but at least it's a material element. So if they think they're giving it to charity, they're probably more likely to give money. Fourth element is that the speaker has to know that it's false, or they're ignorant of its truth, intentionally ignorant of its truth. So the person either knows the statement is false, "I am not really working for Thon, but I'm saying that I am," so they know that's a false statement, or maybe they're ignorant of the truth. You know, someone says, "Hey, the previous president wiretapped my phone lines. I'm just saying that even though I have no idea if it's true or not." That would be ignorance of its truth. So that's really careless with it. It's not just an honest mistake. "Hey, I really thought I was being wiretapped, but I guess maybe I was wrong. The evidence doesn't support it." But this is someone who just out of thin blue basically says, they don't tell you this, but they'll make it sound like it's true. They'll make a statement that it's true, when in fact they have no idea if it's true or not. But they know you're going to rely on that particular statement to give them money, to give them whatever. So that segues right into our next element, which is the speaker's intent that their statement should be acted upon by the person and in the manner reasonably contemplated. So if I tell you that I'm canning for Thon, the reason I'm telling you that is not just to impress you as if we were on a date. If I was trying to impress someone on a date and I said, "Whoa, I discovered electricity," even though we know that's false. Okay, I'm not expecting that you're going to act upon it in any kind of really material way. Maybe I am a little bit with the date, but I'm not trying to defraud you of any kind of money or any other kind of goods, those kinds of things. I'm puffing up some claims. But if my intention is that you really should act upon that statement, so if I say I'm canning for Thon and my intention is you'll give me money because you want to do it for the kids, even though I'm just taking your money for my own benefit, then I've satisfied another element of fraud. So it's my intention that you will act upon that false. Continuing on, the hearer has to be ignorant of the falsity of the statement. So in plainer English, the person I'm trying to defraud has to really believe that I'm telling the truth. If they know I'm lying, it's not fraud. Even if that was my intent, I could be charged with attempted fraud, but I can't be charged with fraud even if they do give me money. So let's say I go up and again, I'm canning for Thon. I know that that's false, but I'm telling you that I'm canning for Thon. I really want to give you to give me money because you think you're giving to Thon. But as it turns out, I'm trying to defraud the person who's actually in charge of the whole fundraising apparatus for Thon. And they know that no canning is going on this weekend and that I do not represent Thon. But they have a good laugh and they said, well, you know what, I'm going to give them $5 anyways, because if they can come up with that kind of good story, why not? It made me laugh. Well, then it's not fraud, because I haven't fooled them. In order for it to be fraud, I have to actually fool them. They have to really be ignorant of the falsity of my claims. So they really have to believe that I am representing Thon. So that's an important element of fraud, because if the hearer says, look, I know you, or they don't even have to say it, if they just think it to themselves, I know this person is telling me a real, whopper of a story. Nonetheless, I'm gonna give them money anyways because it made me laugh. That would not be fraud. I haven't defrauded that person, even if I really wanted to. Again, I could be charged with attempted fraud, but I can't be charged with actual fraud. Related to that, the hearer has to rely upon the truth of my statements. So if they would have given me money regardless of what I told them, even if they thought I really was from Thon, but it turns out they give money to everybody who knocks at their door. So they're not really relying on the truth of my statement that I'm from Thon, then it wouldn't be fraud, even though they thought I really was fraud. So the previous element, the ignorance of the falsity, was fulfilled because they didn't know I really wasn't from Thon, but they just wanted to get rid of me because there was a good show on television. So they're like, I don't even care who you are. Here, it's $5. Just get out, get away from here. Then they haven't really relied upon the truth of my statements. They've just given me $5. So that wouldn't be fraud. If we could show that they didn't really rely on the truth of my statements, they gave me the money anyway, regardless of what my story was, then it's not fraud. Again, it could be attempted fraud, but it's not fraud. The right of the hearer to rely upon it. So this one isn't really problematic, but let's say this is, I'm making a claim about a cocaine, the quality of the cocaine I'm selling them when the quality is terrible, and they're relying on it being really good. Can they really bring a charge of fraud against me if they find out that my cocaine is terrible? No, because they didn't have a right to rely upon it, because they didn't have a right to buy cocaine as an illegal substance. So again, or maybe they're not in a position at the business to rely upon it. It wasn't their job to buy things for Penn State, for instance. They're just an ordinary lecturer, and so they have no authority to sign a contract for Penn State. So is it fraud if someone tries to convince them to sign a contract for Penn State? No, because they didn't really have the authority to rely upon that statement to do anything. They should have passed it on to someone else within Penn State who did have the authority to sign contracts. We also have to show that the hearer actually suffered some kind of injury because of the reliance on the false statement. If the hearer is better off, if I come up to the person and say, hey, I'm the trainer for this horse in the Kentucky Derby, and I'm telling you that this horse has just hurt its leg and will not be able to run, even though it's the favorite, and you decide to change your bet, even though I'm not the trainer. I don't know anything about this horse, but I've just come up and convinced you to change your bet away from the favorite to some other horse, and lo and behold, you relied upon it, but the other horse won, and you just made thousands of dollars. Well, we're not going to claim fraud because you didn't really actually suffer any damages or injuries. You're in a better position. Most of the time, you're going to be worse.